Hi, my name is Karthik. I'm product manager with Microsoft, and today we're going to talk about lean product development. I strongly believe that this is a great source of generating competitive advantage for any firm, be it a startup or a large size company. Let's quickly move on. So, as a standard disclaimer, whatever I say, it's a personal opinion and has nothing to do with my current or previous employers. So we will structure our talk into three buckets. First of all, we'll talk about the common challenges faced by a product manager. I mean, for all practical purposes, PM in this and subsequent slides mean product manager. We'll talk a little bit about lead development and, of course, a general conversation around some of the aspects that are super critical for a PM to succeed. So let's start with a simple example. Like what you see on your screen is typically what you call as tuk-tuk or auto rickshaw. It has different name in different parts of the world. It's predominantly seen in tropical and subtropical areas. In the context of India, right, there are like two large companies. One is called as Bajaj and TV. The other is called as TV. For years and perhaps decades, these two companies have been, competing against each other, building faster, more fuel efficient, cheaper vehicles, three-wheelers. But then somebody decided to crash the party. So think of a situation like you're an automobile company and your biggest competitor is not really another automobile company, but actually a software company, right? Like this is what is happening in today's world. This degree of crazy amount of disruption is happening, right? So let's look at the key lessons from this episode, right? Like first of all, market is changing super fast, whether it is and every market is kind of influenced by technology, and technology is changing super fast, so every industry is changing super fast, right? Like that's kind of a equivalence that you can establish. And you might be like the leader in your industry, but then nothing is certain, right? Like things can change just like that, right? So in such a scenario, how should you look at any kind of product development, right? I mean, this example was more around automobile, but in subsequent slides, we will kind of keep it more narrowed down and focused on technology or software kind of a ecosystem. So as a product manager, what does a product manager do? This is like this is like pretty common knowledge, I would say. You talk to customers, you work with engineering, you work with design teams, you work with market. I mean, you work with engineering to build the products, design to build the whole experience. You work with the marketing team to decide on branding, go to market strategies, and so on and so forth. And on top of it, of course, you have to go ahead and manage some kind of partner relationships as well. Right? So three things. Right? Like first of all, there's a cross-functional coordination required. Like definitely yes. Then there are, as usual, like this is not just pertaining to PMs, but in general there's like limited time and resources, right? Like you don't have all the resources at your command, right? Like there is this whole um, a work that has to be done within a specific time frame. And most importantly, you deal with uncertainty, right? Like if you were like the product manager for the automobile company that I just talked about, how can you even compete against a software company, right? Like there is this crazy amount of uncertainty there. So in some sense, if you look at the key aspects, right? Like somewhere people say PMs are mini CEOs, but I feel they are more closer to entrepreneurs, right? Like there's too much of uncertainty. There's a lot of coordination. You're like an octopus trying to do multitask, trying to do multiple things at a time, right? So in some sense, PM is kind of a quasi entrepreneur, I would say. So if somebody were to ask me like what is a JD of the job description for a PM, right? It would just be this, like that's it, 4 words, like build the right thing, right? Like rest all is just fluff, right? Like rest all is just fillers. Like, just build the right thing, right? Like that's precisely why product management, right? To figure out what is that right thing. Now let's take a sample example. Let's say, I mean, nowadays this blockchain word is being thrown around left, right, and center. That's like the latest buzzword, right? And of course, blockchain is a great thing or something. It does it has two big features or attributes or properties. First is it helps to build trust, and second thing is it enables a peer-to-peer kind of conversation, and hence it kind of takes away the middleman. There are no intermediaries, or it reduces the intermediaries. So let's say your leadership, somebody had had a massively a great idea. And they came to you and said, "Hey, look, I want you to build a revolutionary product based on blockchain. You have a year. You have like maybe 5 engineers and 2 designers. Take this. I want to see the beta in 4 months or 6 months, and then the final version in a year. And then I want to make XYZ $1 million, right? Like the problem statement is just going to be this, right? Go and build revolutionary product based on blockchain. Now you'll be like, you might get out of the waiting room, but then you'll be like, what? Like, first of all, what is the problem I'm trying to solve, right? Like, if I had to build something, I have to figure out what the problem is. I don't even know who my customers are. Like, who is my customer? What industry am I operating? Am I trying to build some kind of trust in the supply chain? For example, you're trying to ensure that all food marked as organic are truly organic, right? Or maybe you're trying to ensure that elections are fair. Maybe you're trying to build some product in banking wherein there's a lot of cross-country international trade that happens, and there's lack of trust and establish trust and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, product building is inherently risky. Product building is inherently uncertain, right? Like, and this happens across the hierarchy of the organization. It is not limited to, let's say, just the strategic things, right? Like at all 3 levels, like strategic, tactical, and operational, there is definitely uncertainty involved. The uncertainty increases as you move up the pyramid, and reduces as you go down the pyramid, right? Like, but then uncertainty is there. It's always there. So obviously the question is, why are we harping so much on uncertainty, right? Like why are we being so negative? Why are we saying nothing is permanent and things of that sort? Because if there's one constant thing in a PM's life, it's just uncertainty. Right? Like, and if a product manager can handle uncertainty, that's his or her best friend. And if he or she can't manage it, that's their worst enemy, right? Because this is given and set. Like, whenever somebody asks you what should we build, you will not know the answers, right? You might have a hunch, you might have that gut feeling, you might have a notion of, okay, this is where I think the industry is heading, but then you would definitely not know for sure as to what to do when you start off at time t equals 0. So let's understand, why is it that building products are so hard, right? Like what makes it so different, right? If like people build stuff, but still, why do we say it's so hard, right? First of all, every product is different, and hence every problem is different, right? So what happens is, let's think of iPhone, right? Like iPhone, when it came out in whatever 2008 or so, plus or minus, it was a disruptive innovation, wow product and everything, right? But now it has reached a stage where it is, the industry has matured a lot, the product has matured a lot, and hence, as a product manager for iPhone, what do you build next? You might make the screen larger, smaller, the phone thinner, faster, change the colors, right? But then how do you create that value for the customers, right? So, and compare that problem to a problem, let's say the blockchain that we were talking about. The industry is not mature, the product is not mature, you don't know what to do. Look at healthcare, the industry is mature, but the products are not so mature, right? Like, so in that context, everybody is dealing with a different set of problem and different set of challenges, right? Second thing is, let's say as a product manager, you are supposed to know what is the right thing, and who are you building it for? Customers. You go and ask customers, they will say, I need XYZ things, but customers don't even know what they need many times, right? Same thing. Let's take the iPhone example, right? Back in 2006 or 7, had you gone back to customers and said, what do you want in a mobile phone? They would, in all probability, say, I want my flip phones to be small. Same thing, right? Larger, smaller, thinner, faster, different color. They wouldn't even envision something like an iPhone. And people are expecting you to go and disrupt the market, figure out, first of all, observe the customers, figure out the latent needs, then go disrupt the market, do some kind of crazily awesome innovation. And let's say you do all that innovation. Unfortunately, the time to monetize is, or the time to exploit the market with your innovation is kind of shrinking with every passing minute, right? Like the first mover advantage is kind of dwindling. It's not like a pharma industry where they have a patent and you can sit on it for like 10 years and make billions of dollars, right? Like you come out with a product, 6 months or 1 year down the line, you have a competitive product, maybe something which is probably better, right? So nothing is to be taken for granted. So you have to constantly keep innovating, and that's what the primary challenge for a product manager is. Being relevant is most critical, right? So if you are to be relevant in the market, if you are to be relevant in the relevant to the customer, what should we do? Like, what can change in the way we build a product, right? Like there are two polar styles of building a product, right? Like one is called I call it as ship and pray, right? Okay, you start off with a product, a project. Like you figure out, okay, this is what I think my customers need. I will make a list of maybe X, maybe 10 features that customers expect. Of course, I'll rank order them, prioritize them, and all, and I'll try to give a good, bug-free, complete product to customers in general, right? Like that's your ship and pay strategy, wherein you think what is right for the customers, you go and build and deliver a decent output. And of course, you always want to wow the customers, right? Like by giving a surprise, right? Typically, what happens in this is it's as the name says, it's ship and pray. Like you think something is right, you go, you ship it, and you pray. Like, that's it. Like let's see how it goes, right? Like let's take it forward from there, right? Like that's kind of, this is a risky proposition because first of all, there's a disconnect between what we think is required for the customers and what the customers require. Secondly, we spend too much of time on implementing stuff which may be useful, may not be useful. I don't even know when I'm doing this, right? And then of course this whole thing of how do I get feedback from the product and how do I incorporate it in the next cycle of development. It's a little complicated. Then comes the whole paradigm of lean development, right? Like what lean development? It's not a strategy. It's not a structure. It's just a philosophy, right? All lean development says is it just accepts that you'll never have clarity, right? Like lean development is not built for lean development is not like a 5-year plan where things are going to be stable. Lean development simply says no matter what you do, product development is inherently risky. So you will never have good clarity. So that's like the fundamental proposition. And lean development is based on the principle of convergence, right? Like at time and when you begin something, you may not know what it is. But slowly as you experiment and figure out more about the customers and their problems, you kind of converge over a period of time, right? That's the second part. And in lean development, building a product is not so important compared to learning about the customer or his or her needs. Like it's product is just a means to an end, and really. And and fourth principle, if I could say, for of lean development is that be super stingy, be miserly. Like, don't invest a dollar in something. I mean, don't invest heavily. I should take this. Don't invest heavily in anything that you don't know will work, right? Like only when you're sure that something is right and something is worth investing, go ahead and invest. And of course, like you are building for customers, so there is no product development which is disconnected from the customer, right? So to that extent, lean development is for me it epitomizes a growth mindset. Like typically, growth mindset says that you need not know everything, but you should be able to learn everything, right? Like lean development is exactly growth mindset. It starts with a proposition that I don't know nothing. I accept that it is risky, but over a period of time, we'll converge and we'll figure out through low cost experiments, right? Like that's the philosophy. So let's just look at the few. This might be a kind of a reiteration of what I already said. Like let's look at few fundamental principles of lean development, right? Like first is product development is inherently risky, and second bullet is what we should kind of focus a lot, because this is the crux of everything in lean development. All it says is anything that helps you to learn about the customers or their problems is value, right? Building a product is not really value. Like the success of something is should not be measured in terms of, oh, did I implement this feature, or did I fix this bug, did I do this, did I do that? Success of anything must be measured in terms of did I learn something more about the customer and their needs, right? Like that is what is going to help me improve my product. And third principle is avoid wastage. And wastage simply means any effort that does not help you to create the value that was defined in the previous point is wastage. If you invest in something and it does not help you to kind of figure out more about the customer or their needs, or it does not add to the solving of problem, it's a waste. So minimize wastage as much as possible. I'll get into the experimentation piece in a bit. It just says lean is all about, right? Like it's about being agile, it's about being adaptable, it's about constantly listening to customers and being on the ground, right? So lean product development is this philosophy of how you do things. And I always, in my head, I always think that lean is in some sense anti-build. And this is important because especially for startups and whenever you're embarking on a journey to build a new product, right? Inherently, we as product managers or as engineers or designers, right, like inherently creative people who are expected to create something have this shipping bias or building bias. So like you, the moment you get a problem statement, you start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like define the problem, identify the customers, go and do this, right? Like there's a crazy amount of urge to go and ship something and build something and deliver something, right? So that's always there. But then lean is not about building anything. Lean is about the lean development makes you shift your focus from building something to learning something, right? Learn about the customers. So when your lens shifts from building something to learning about the customer, you realize that, oh, if I have to learn about the customer, I don't need to build a product per se. Like, for example, I love this example, right? Like, let's take an example of Tesla. When Elon Musk decided to build electric cars, he had probably, and this is my hypothesis, probably he had a hypothesis that, okay, I want to know whether people are going to buy my electric vehicles, Tesla cars, right? Now, what should I do, right? He just said, okay, I'm allowing pre-order. You get it at a discounted price. You get cars at discounted price. You pre-book, pay the money, and then you will get the car gets delivered after X amount of time. This is not much about discounts, right? This is not about branding. At a meta or a fundamental level, I think this is in some sense validation of the simple hypothesis that are people willing to pay the money and buy your stuff, right? Like, of course, there was like kind of crazy amount of demand for this, and it of course helped Tesla to build a brand. And there are other benefits to this, but at a fundamental level, you could just have a pre-order. You could just simply have UI mocks, right? Like you go and create mocks. You're developing a mobile app, create a mock of Happy Path, let customers use it, try it out. Dropbox did video of the product even before the product was built. You could have a beta waiting list, right? Like where you can say, hey, we leave us your email ID if you want to test this product, right? Like you could have a beta waiting list. I would go to the extent of saying it's okay even if you have a fake download button, right? Like, and this is like an extreme way of looking at things, may not be applicable always. Let's say you have a web page, you put in all the value proposition and you say download the app here, and then people go there. I mean, you just say, hey, we are working on this product. Leave your email ID. We'll get back to you when the product is ready, right? Like if you're building a new product, the most important thing that you want to validate is, will am I building the right thing and will customers buy it or use it, right? Like you did not build a product to know this. Is what I'm trying to kind of refer to. So again, there are two. Now that we are talking about learning, right? Like let's double click this a little bit. Let's look at learning as in a traditional way and a slightly different way of looking at it, or a feedback loop person. Traditionally, what have we have always been taught about: build something, measure something, and learn from it. Right? It's a standard BML cycle. Nothing wrong with this, right? Like, but the problem is this starts with building. Like this starts with building, wherein you first have to decide what to build and why should we even build. Like the questions like should we even build something never kind of pop up, right? Like it's always you start to build and move forward. And then let's say you build something, you are trying to measure something, and then you realize, oh, I want to learn something else. Uh, oh, but then I can't learn about it because we are not tracking a particular metric and so on and so forth, right? And this happens in general. If you are a product manager in any company, you realize that, oh, I forgot to log a particular telemetry. Now I want the data point. You go back to engineers and request them to add it and so on and so forth. But what if we change the lens and say, before building, there is a LMBML, right? Like there is like a learning planning phase, there is an execution phase, and there is a tracking phase, right? Like first of all, you decide what you want to learn. Forget about building. Like you decide what you want to learn. I want to know whether my customers will use this workflow versus that workflow, whether my customers will use my product or not, like whether will people prefer this over that. Like there is always a question mark, right? First you decide what you want to learn about the customer. Then you identify the metric, right? Like, okay, if I want to find some pattern, maybe I need to track engagement, acquisition, whatever that thing is, right? Define the metric. So once you know what you want to learn, once you know what you want to measure, then you have a more clearer view of, should you even build this? Are there ways of getting this learning without building the product, as I was talking about in the previous slide, right? So then your resource allocation, the amount of time you spend, and the way you look at the problem itself will change. So there's no shipping bias here, right? So once you have done that, once you figure out the way of building this, either via an MVP or using any means, right? Then of course there is this tracking and learning phase wherein you go and measure things and right. So it's not a revolutionary concept. It's just a simple change in lens. Don't look at build, measure, learn. Look at learn, met, figure out the learning outcome, identify the metrics, and then do a BMI. That's far more impactful and effective. So let's move forward. Right? And again, next is the moment we talk in the previous slide we were talking about building a right. And inherently you have to build stuff. Right? Like everything can't be in there. Like as a product manager, at the end of the day, you have to deliver things, right? And obviously your first version or V1. Uh, uh, old school of thought says V1 has to be good. Lean's principle says V1 is meant for learning something. So it's okay if it serves a purpose, just to learn about other stuff, right? So V1 is simply minimum viable product. Uh, uh, the simple purpose of this whole exercise of building an MVP is to validate a hypothesis. It may or may not be an actual product, as I was talking about in the previous two slides. It's supposed to be super quick, something which you can put together quickly. It's okay if it is buggy. It's meant to test the happy path, not really the edge cases. And then whatever workflow you're trying to validate or whatever workflow you're trying to work on, it should be functionally complete. What I'm trying to say when I say functionally complete is you have the bare minimum feature set that is necessary to complete the happy path. Anything extra is not required. Okay? Now, the single purpose of MVP is to validate a hypothesis. Once the hypothesis is validated, of course, you will go and put in more resources, you will add more features, you will fix the bugs and fix the edge cases and improve the quality and so on and so forth. But that is second step only after the value proposition is validated. If not, then you just junk this idea and move on, right? Like that's where the resource optimization thing kicks in the lean world. So let's look at this, right? Like again, this slide is super critical. So first of all, why are we doing lean product development? Lean product development is simply about, okay, I look at product development as a series of experiments. I keep doing experiments, right? But then what's the point of doing experiments, right? Like at the end of the day, as product manager, you're supposed to build a product. How does experiment and product link into each other, right? Like what is this? What is happening? So let's maybe spend a minute or two on this slide. At the top, let's say you did an experiment, right? Like the standard LMBML. You did some experiment, right? And you had a hypothesis in your mind. So the first thing is, of course, you have a decision point wherein did this experiment validate my hypothesis, right? Um, uh, in some sense, if a hypothesis is completely validated or invalidated, it's a successful experiment. Successful experiment does not mean only the hypothesis is successfully validated. No, anything which tells you either do this or don't do this is great. That's success. What you don't want to be in is in a situation wherein you did an experiment and you're not really able to say statistically, or I mean, in that sense, in general, say whether the hypothesis was right or not. Right. In this slide, for the sake of simplicity, let's assume that we have clear answers as to yes or no for a particular experiment. Let's say you did an experiment and the hypothesis got validated, right? Like then it's awesome. You just move forward. Either you move to the next experiment or you kind of improve the quality of the product, depending on what you're trying to build. Just move forward. Like right? That's awesome. Let's say for some reason the hypothesis got invalidated, right? Like hypothesis typically meant like, okay, you thought of something and that's not how it works, right? That's the case. In which case, then you reach a point wherein it's always the entrepreneur dilemma, right? Like that's where the gut comes in. I think this hypothesis is right. Maybe this experiment is wrong. Maybe should I just double check it once more? Right? Should I? Because I know for sure this is going to work. Like you always have that degree of conviction, especially entrepreneurs have that degree of conviction. They are not the people who are going to run away at the first failure or first looking at the first disheartening results of an experiment, right? So At that point, you can either persist and persevere and move forward. Like move forward in the sense, I think my hypothesis is right. Maybe this was a blip. Maybe this was an outlier result. Let me just revalidate this. Let me run another experiment with few parameters changed, with few things changed, and let's see if this works, right? So that's the persist side of things, which is what it is. Like maybe you will do another experiment, but then let's say you've done this experiment and you're sure that this is not really working, right? Like then all you do is, okay, fine, things are not working. It's okay. We did some throwaway work. We'll move on. We'll re-strategize. We'll ignore the sunk cost and we'll move on. That's the repivoting or the repivoting side of things, right? So that's where this whole closed loop learning comes in, because constantly you're ensuring that you're reducing wastage, you're building what the customer wants, and you're making progress, right? Like that's the and I was talking about repivoting, right? Like, and repivoting can happen at all three levels. Like it could be at a strategic level, tactical level, and operational level, right? Let's take few examples. Slack, which is like one of the most popular workplace messaging apps, right? Like, or extensions, whatever. Slack did not start as Slack. Like it started as an internal communication for online gaming, if I'm not. But then again, maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they did a bunch of experiments and then decided that okay, this is not working. Maybe it's not meant for gaming. Maybe it's meant for a different use case, and they built an awesome product with Slack. At a tactical level, maybe you thought we should only go. We should have mobile application, but then you realize, oh, even desktop is needed, or vice versa, right? Like that's one tactical decision that you take. It has good degree of rework to be done if you have to change the decision. And then at the operational level, let's say you're designing a UI. Should I keep the button here or there? Should it be green or should it be blue or yellow? Like something, right? Like so if you look at the right side of the slide, operation it talks something about one-way doors and two-way door changes, right? Like two-way door changes are something which is reversible with minimal cost, and one way is like it's very difficult to come back and restart, right? Like that's like a big thing. So at an operation level, obviously the impact is lower, the cost is lower. So most of the decisions tend to be two-way doors, right? It does not really matter if you got it wrong. If the button was blue, instead it had to be green, right? You can always change it. Not a big deal. At a tactical level, it's a mix of one and two-way doors. Again, depends on the context. But then the moment it becomes a one-way door, there are some associated costs which will increase the cost of changing the decision. And strategic typically, I mean, not always, but typically is a one-way door change, changing your strategy at an organization level or at a vertical. So these repivots are, I mean, experiments are supposed to happen at all three levels. Repivots are supposed to happen at all three levels, and it's a bottom-up model, right? Like at an operation level, you do something, things don't, the needle don't does not move. Then tactically, you change few things, still the needle does not move. Then strategically, you realize, oh God, this is not working. Maybe we have to change gears and switch to another direction. So to that extent, repivoting is a constant thing. It does happen. So I have a couple of maybe 3-4 slides that I would like to end with. How to make this whole lean product development work, right? Like first of all, involve customers early. There is no product building without customers. There is not. I mean, stealth mode is fine, but stealth mode should not be dissociated from customers, right? Like that's super important. uh, uh, Involve engineers and designers, your teammates in the process very early. Get them invested in this whole concept of experimentation, because believe me, nobody likes to write a piece of code and junk it the next week or the next month, right? If engineers and designers and the other stakeholders are on board and they know why you are doing this, then the chances of somebody getting demoralized is very less, right? Like they understand that it's a process, they are on board. Test the riskiest assumptions first. Like obviously get the most critical things out of your way, and low risky ones obviously you can deal with it as and when time comes. Work in small batches. Don't be super ambitious. And most importantly, beware of vanity metrics. Right, like we tend to get carried away with acquisitions and engagement numbers and lower attritions and things of that sort. Uh, just be cautious of the fact that most of these are vanity metrics, because any metric that does not establish cause and effect relationship. I mean, typically an experiment is supposed to establish a cause and effect relationship. Like I did this, and hence customers behave like that kind of a relationship, right? A metric should closely track this behavior of cause and relation kind of an interaction. It I mean that's why choosing the right metric is super critical. And of course, lean resists develop building, right? It's okay to tell your customers or your manager also, or management for that matter, saying that I don't think we should build this. This is not what the customer wants. So it's okay to resist building until you're sure that the customer needs it, right? Like just these are some guiding principles for lean. So last two slides. I mean, as a product manager, you might do all the heavy, all the work. You might do all the lean development and that and this, right? But then, most important thing for anything is culture. Peter Drucker says culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's actually true, right? Like the team culture is super important. Organization culture is extremely critical for lean development to work. Because senior management has to create an environment wherein it must be okay to fail as long as you you as long as the value is created. Like this value is in terms of learning more about the customer or the problem. So as long as you have that needle going, it's okay, right? Success is not building products. Success is not shipping products. Success is not putting out things in the market. Success is about converging, understanding customer needs and problems. As a PM, you have to be the energy center. I would say you have to generate energy and excitement in the team. He or she is the barometer for team morale, right? Like there's nobody else who's going to talk about your products more, celebrate success, tell engineers and designers saying that, hey, this is a cool feature that you have built, is what I heard from customers, right? You have to constantly generate that energy. And given that product managers don't have any kind of authoritative control, a kind of a formal reporting structure with respect to engineers, designers, marketing, person like me, right? Like invest in people heavily, right? Because the only currency you have is that of influence, non-authoritative influence, right? So to that extent, PMs have to be they have to invest a lot consciously in people around you. And just two parting thoughts. For a PM, as much as learning, unlearning is also important, right? Like more often than not, we forget that we have our own biases, we have our own mental models, and it's very hard to kind of stay away from it, because that's what essentially defines us. So first thing, most important thing is fine. As human beings, we will learn a lot of things, but then we must be prepared to unlearn a lot of things. And at a philosophical level, we should learn to be gentle, because be gentle to yourself, simply because nobody has all the answers, right? Like it's okay to tell people that you have not figured it all, and eventually with a little bit of more experiments, more research, more customer interactions, and more observations, and with you will put in crazy amount of effort, and you will figure out what to do, right? So in that sense, it's okay to be gentle on yourself, right? Like, that's super important. Otherwise, you will either burn out or take unnecessary stress and get anxious and things like that sort, right? So as long as we put in the right efforts, things will work. So most of the concepts here that I talked about lean development, I've picked it up from this book called The Lean Startup. It's been there for quite some time, I think, for the last 5-6 years at least. Uh, it's a great book. I definitely suggest you read this book, and this goes into the whole lean development concept in detail. So that's it's kind of highly suggested. And thank you. I'm reachable on my LinkedIn. This is a link to my LinkedIn profile. Happy to connect with you guys and take any questions, if at all we have any. Thank you once again, and I do hope that you read. This is just a conversation starter. Nobody can complete or understand lean development in 25-30 minutes. I just hope that this becomes a beginning of a journey where we learn more about lean product development and move further. Thank you. Thanks a lot.